What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Real Life Podcast. I'm Brian.
And I'm Grace.
We are going to get into a conversation today that might make people's skin crawl a little bit sometimes when you bring this up, especially in any kind of context of being a Christ follower or church.
Okay, this sounds scary.
Yeah, so there's a handful of things at Wellspring that kind of operate as maybe not necessarily core values, but things that that I personally want to emulate and live out. Mm-hmm. And one of those things, obviously, we start off with saying like we want to live deep, mm-hmm. and that means having a deep life in Christ because He is that source, that overflowing source for us. And so I want to live in that deep place. And then the next thing on the list is be generous. So that's what I want to talk about. We're going to talk about being generous.
Are we on a push for money here?
Yeah. Like, listen, if you just, there's a link below. If you just click that link and sow that seed. No, not at all, actually. That's not like, so when we talk about being generous, what does that mean? Like, what do we mean when we say it?
Right.
At Wellspring, what do we mean? But overall, like, why should I be generous? Like, what's the purpose behind generosity? And so I think that's worth
There's a
talking
lot in
about.
there.
Yeah.
I mean, my head's spinning just thinking about why.
Yeah. So when most people hear, especially somebody who's a pastor, who's somebody's connected to a church, talking about you should be generous.
Yes.
Right? Being generous is good. Mm-hmm. There's a trope. Or maybe a thought that kind of washes over people that the church just wants my money.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll be really honest with you. That's because that there are a lot of places that just want your money.
Yeah.
There's a lot of dudes out there that just want your money.
It's not untrue to think that that's what some folks are doing.
Yeah, and I hate that. Yeah. I hate that. It unfortunately. Just like any other industry, just like any other group of people or profession, like it's made up of people. And sometimes people are people.
Are less than perfect.
Are people, myself included. Right. I have plenty of things that you're a really good friend to point out to me.
Thank you. Same.
And so, when we talk about generosity, that is like kind of it leaves a weird taste or stain to people, especially in the context of a church, because of abuse, because of pastors that use the finances of the church to do what they want to do,
right?
Or they take care of themselves. Meanwhile, like the church is struggling in one area or the other. And believe me, I've been doing ministry in churches for like 16 years now, and I can tell you horror stories.
No doubt.
But that doesn't negate like bad stories or instances where people have acted poorly when it comes to people's generosity, taking advantage of that. That doesn't negate what God says about generosity. Right. It doesn't negate about what Jesus says about being generous. Yeah. Right. And so that's what I kind of want to engage with. And so,
and I guess just to be clear, when we say being generous, and we can unpack this a little bit as we go through, but being generous is not just with your money.
Ding, ding, ding. Yeah. Every time you hear it in church, it is always around the context of your money, your money, your money, your money, your money.
Right.
There's a reason for that. But again, I think it gets abused a lot of times.
Right.
Jesus talks about money in the New Testament a ton.
Yes.
He talks about money in the New Testament more than he talks about almost anything else.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that.
Right.
So when we say be generous, and when you come to Wellspring, when you hear me teach about being generous or anything like that, I will never exclusively talk about money because that's not what the concept of generosity is.
It's about.
I always, even this past Sunday, in our teaching, if you want to listen, you can go and find it. It's in our storyteller series. It's week number 8. I talked about living an open-handed life. And that, to me, is the clearest picture of generosity. living an open-handed life.
So let's talk about that. What does living open-handed look like? What does that mean?
So, for instance, when we talk about finances, let's go ahead and start finance. Let's get that booger out of the way, and then we'll talk about all the other aspects. Jesus talks a lot about people's money, the treasure, and everything like that. What living an open-handed life is when it comes to our finances, we all have a tendency to really want to hold on tight to that because this is my money because I earned it. Right? When you talk to some people, I just had a conversation this week with Jake, one of our elders, about mentioning like a biblical concept of tithing, right? And he's like, if you ever bring that up to someone like that isn't practicing that, especially if they've worked hard and done well for themselves, the idea of them just giving money away consistently is like, why would I do that?
Right.
And I understand that.
They've got no point of reference for it. Yeah.
Like I understand that. The reason why Jesus talks so much about money is that if you can learn to be open-handed with your money, it will teach you to be open-handed with every other area of your life.
There you go.
And it's because we want to hold on to money so tightly.
Yeah.
And so if you can, the reason why Jesus talks about it is if you can just learn to be open-handed with your money, that God has blessed me with this. God has blessed me with the opportunity to make money. God has blessed me with the opportunity to have these resources or with this job or whatever it is. God's blessed me with that. So I'm not going to hold on tightly to it as if it's mine and I did all this stuff to earn it and not acknowledge God's providential work in my life to give me the opportunity for that.
And I think you just hit on a key point is that it's not my money.
Yeah,
it's not my money.
Yeah, just like the breath in my lungs isn't mine.
Right.
Like if I'm a Christ follower, that's what I believe.
Yeah.
That's not mine.
Now,
like,
yes,
I've been given this.
I expended effort, but that effort came from a bunch of skills and things that came into my life from God. He birthed me into a particular country, and I'm able to do things, and He gave me a brain.
Yeah, a point of reference that there's some people who don't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
Not even to work.
Right.
They don't even have the opportunity to do that because maybe it's an illness or one reason or another. And so understanding that this opportunity to create wealth or to get money comes from God. So I want to be open-handed with that.
So I think the first lesson here is change the conversation, change the wording to say, this is not my money, this is God's money.
Yeah.
And I'm just stewarding it.
Yeah. And then if you can get there, it will help you be open-handed with every other area of your life.
Right.
Like this past Sunday, we talked about forgiveness.
Yeah.
Lots of people don't want to offer forgiveness to other people. And believe me, I understand. Yeah. Like you experience pain, you experience brokenness, you experience all these things. Maybe there's been some really terrible things done to you. Mm-hmm. And so you don't want to extend forgiveness. I get that. But if you can learn to be open-handed with something like finances, it just helps you understand the concept of being open-handed with forgiveness because I've received forgiveness. So I don't want to hold on to it. Mm-hmm. I want to let it go. Mm-hmm. And that is the concept of generosity.
There you go.
That is the concept of being open-handed.
Yeah.
The time that I have. Well, this is my time. I have it. Bro, it was given to you.
Yep.
Like the days that I have are given to me. Like, so I want to be open-handed with them. Like, God, what do you want to do with my time? Like my children, these are my children. They're going to do this, and I have dreams for them. And you see maybe the sports dad who's like living vicariously through his children, like to play sports, because like his best sports days are done,
Or the music parent.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So
you've got to be
and I understand. I have little girls. I have dreams for them.
Yeah.
I have dreams for them, but I want to be open-handed with them. And where the concept of financial generosity comes in is this: if I can't learn to be open-handed with money, I can't learn to be open-handed with anything else.
Right.
Because that's the thing that I want to hold on to the tightest.
Yep.
And so, generosity is much more than finances, much more than money. Generosity is living an open-handed life.
So what are some of the other things then that we can be generous with?
That we can be generous with. Well, certainly my time, like I referenced, like the days that I have aren't mine. And so I want to be open-handed with my time. That doesn't mean, I understand that like you're listening to a church podcast and you're listening to a pastor talk. That doesn't mean when I say be open-handed with your time, that you should spend every single open opportunity that you have at the church and volunteering at the church. Like this is opportunities that you could be giving to me. Like that is not what I'm saying.
Right.
Being open-handed with my time
Yep.
means I'm not going to make all my time about me.
Right.
I think there's a lot of parents who aren't open-handed with their time to their children.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, well, this is me time.
Yep.
Like this is you do you. This is me time.
Yep.
Like, and that's like I make jokes about. You probably aren't familiar with this show, but there's a show that my kids watch constantly called Bluey.
Okay.
Do you know this?
No.
You should know it because they're Australian.
Are they?
They're little
Okay.
Australian shepherds. Yeah, you should know this.
I vaguely recall you talking about this. No, don't do that.
No.
Don't do that.
Yeah. Okay. So, so Bluey.
Okay.
Bluey's dad.
I don't have young kids anymore, so yeah.
I think the name is Ringo Dingo. I don't know. I don't know the dad.
Okay.
You can comment the name of the dad, but he is the greatest dad of all time because he always has time
For his kids.
for the kids.
That's
Always
awesome.
have time. Yeah, which is great. It makes me look like a trash dad.
Right,
You know
right.
what I mean? And I'm like, come on, like,
Yeah.
tell your kids you have to work at least once. Like, come on. But he's like, that's a very like a simple example that I think if you have parents, if you have children that are like young, you've been shamed by Bluey's parents because they're very open-handed with their kids. Yeah. But that's an example of being open-handed with your time.
Right. I do connect with other business professionals in the community, and I'm constantly amazed at how some of the busiest, sharpest, most successful business people have actually set aside specific amounts of time to go and do community service projects, and go and do things for the community that bring them zero value, but just get out there and give back. And they just quietly do it in the background and no one really knows about it. But when you get to know those people and you see they do that, think, man, that is awesome.
Yeah. Well, because when you get the concept of like my time isn't about me, my money isn't about me, like offering forgiveness, like we talked about, like that's not about me.
Right.
Like the more you can get your mind wrapped around, my life is not all about me.
Yeah.
That's the purpose of generosity.
Yep.
That's the purpose of living open-handed. Like
Right.
with your time, with your money, with forgiveness. What's something else that pops in your head that you could be open-handed
I
with?
can be open-handed with how about with love and respect and kindness
Yeah.
and how I treat other people.
Yeah. Because I can be stingy with that.
Right. Praise.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that I can end up being stingy with,
Right.
instead of generous with.
Yeah.
I'm stingy with my kindness.
Yeah.
I'm going to be kind to people if they're kind to me.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'll be kind to them. Well, you're being pretty stingy with your kindness. I'm going to love people if they love me, but I will never love my enemy.
Right.
Like never. Like I know Jesus said it, but that was Jesus. This is me. Like
I can't do
I'll
that.
never do that.
Yeah.
Well, you're being stingy with all those things.
I have tried. I don't think I do a very good job of this, but I try to find something nice to say about everybody I meet as often as I can.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I say, I do a horrible job of that. But being generous with praise, looking for good in people, and saying, "Hey, man, you do that really well," or "I really like that about you," or "That's," and I don't know. When people say that to me, it kind of gives me a little boost.
Yeah, it's amazing how that actually makes you stick out, like you kind of stick out.
Yeah, you
because
notice
you are generous with.
And I
giving
think that's
people
where I got it
compliments.
from. You know, I saw some people that were doing that when they come into the room, they're just, hey, you know, and they're going around praising everybody,
Yeah.
and there's something about them that glows.
Yeah, when you see someone practicing generosity, being open-handed with anything, they stick out.
Right.
And you're like, oh man, there's something about that. That guy really, because
That's so cool.
my experience a lot of times is that if you bring anyone up, typically what people will bring up is something negative about a person. I've certainly done that. Once I'll talk about this person and I'm like, wait,
He or she is blah, blah, blah,
wait
blah,
till you
negative.
hear what I have to say about them. You know what I mean? I'm being so stingy with compliments or praise or so stingy with my love for a person.
Right.
And I will never be convinced that that's the type of life that God had in mind for me. Like that's why he talks about being generous and open-handed over. He doesn't say the phrase open-handed, but that's why he talks about generosity over and over and over and over and over again. And there's a blessing that's tied to being generous.
I was going to say that because he knows this is what's best for me, because it helps me.
Yeah.
There is blessing for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
In doing this.
And that's the idea that when you live the type of life that Jesus prescribes to people in the New Testament, which is love the Lord with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. When you live that type of life, he says, hey, guess what? Like, I am blessing here. This type of life, there's all kinds of blessing here.
Right.
What happens a lot of times is I will choose to live outside of that. Mm-hmm. I will choose to not live open-handedly.
Right.
I will choose to not be generous in all these different areas of my life.
So hang on, where are you going with this? Okay, so the blessing is that if I'm generous with my money, God's going to bless me with money.
Oh, yeah.
Is that how it works?
Certainly, yeah.
So
that's exactly what I'm saying. And if you would just send right now, 1995, click the link. No,
with the free set of steak knives heading your way. Yeah.
Steak knives. That's amazing. Yeah. So and a hanky that has my face on it. No, that a lot of times that is what people assume and think.
Yeah.
Oh, if I'm generous in the area of finances, that means I'll get a lot of money, and that's how that'll work. So what you're describing is something that'll myself and I think is pretty prevalent in the church today is results-driven faith.
Right.
I will believe what God says about generosity because if I'm generous with money, I'll get money.
Right.
Because there's churches that teach that.
Yep.
Like if I'm generous with money, then I'll get money. Like that's the blessing that I'll receive.
Yep. Or if I'm generous with compliments, then people are going to
compliment
compliment
will just
me.
compliment me.
Yeah. Or if I'm generous with forgiveness, then people are going to forgive me.
Right. And if you do practice generosity and you don't receive those results, what most people do is stop being generous.
Right.
Like what most people do is like, well, this open-handed living, that's for the birds. I'm not doing that anymore.
People are taking advantage of me.
Bingo. Like, that's what it goes to.
Yep.
That is, you have to get to the place in your mind where you can believe that I am going to have faith. I'm going to believe what God says, regardless of the results that I get.
Say it again.
I am going to believe what God says, regardless of the results that I receive.
Wow. Okay. So you said this was going to be a little uncomfortable.
Yeah,
I'm feeling uncomfortable.
That is
now.
not easy.
Yeah.
Like I know that to be true.
Yep.
Like I know it to be true that faith isn't contingent on results. Like my faith is not dependent on the results that I receive from God. That's not faith. I know that. But that doesn't mean that I operate like that.
Right.
Or I talk like that.
Yep.
Like because I'm a person. Right? Like I'm also trying to work out my own salvation. And I'm also on the same journey to try to know God in a deeper way. And
as all of us.
To live this deep life.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times, even when I talk about faith, when I talk about being generous, like I have a result in mind that I would like. And when I practice open-handed living or when I practice generosity and I don't receive that result, it makes me want to close up.
Yeah.
Because my faith is in the result.
Yep.
My faith isn't in the God who could provide a result.
Right.
My faith is in the result.
Yep.
Well,
but you said he's going to give us a blessing.
Yeah. So what is that?
Yeah.
What is the blessing? If it's not like, hey man, you might be open-handed in the area of finances, and I've heard stories. I know people who, when they practice that, like it's amazing. They have these stories of like, well, I did this, and then boom, here was this huge financial blessing that I received. That's amazing. Yeah. I also know people who have been generous for years and years and years and have never like hit the lottery, like not actual lottery, but like have never got repaid back in a financial way.
Right.
I believe that the blessing of being generous, of living an open-handed life, is living an open-handed life. Like what that does for you, what that does in you, and what that does through you, that is a blessing.
So I would say that's awesome. And I would say it another way. For me, it reminds me that the only thing that matters is my relationship with the Lord, and it points me to Him, points me to trust Him, points me to rely on Him, points me to look to Him, points me to understand Him. Whenever I'm being generous, whether or not I'm getting blessings or results, it pushes me further into His arms.
Yeah. Well, I was talking with my house church last night, and this type of conversation, like adjacent topic, came up, and I basically asked the question, like, hey, here's this result that you wanted. The result that you're wanting, the blessing that you're wanting, if you never get it, how does that affect your affection for God?
Yeah.
What if you never got it?
Yep.
Or what if you get it?
Yep.
How does it affect your love for God?
Frankly, I think sometimes if you get it, it can be worse.
Yeah. It's like, well, but in our heads we say, well, I'll love Him more if He gives it to me. I'll love God. I'll have more love and zeal for God if He gives me this blessing. Or if He doesn't give me this blessing, we'll never say, well, I won't be disappointed at all.
Right. Like I can tell you from a bunch of gray hairs that I've got here that multiple times I've been blessed, and it has ultimately led me to be further from Him.
Yeah. Well, because what happens with my stubborn heart sometimes is, let's say I'm living an open-handed life. This is the battle, man. I've done this so many times. Let's say I'm living
I've
in
done it more.
I'll catch up. Yeah, hopefully not, maybe not. But let's say I'm living an open-handed life, and God blesses me. My immediate reaction so many times is to immediately take my eyes off of I'm doing this for the Lord. I'm doing this to the Lord because I love Him, because He's worthy, because of what He's done for me. And I receive a blessing, and immediately my eyes go to what He just blessed me with in my hand. I go, wow, look at this. This is so great. You know what? I'm so great that I got this. Like, look how great I am. Like, I immediately turn my thoughts and my affections to the blessing that I received, and I remove them from the blesser who gave them to me. Like that's what happens so many times. Like that's the battle for me.
I've done that. So we talked about compliments, and I'll go on waves, and it doesn't happen as often as I'd like it to. But every now and again, I'm going to compliment people, look for the good in them. And then someone will come to me and say, oh, you're always so complimentary. You're always looking for the best in people. Guess what happens?
You're like, you know what? I do that. I do that.
I am good. Aren't I good? And then ultimately, I've just received this blessing of a return compliment. And I take it the wrong way.
Like I think that's about me. And I've missed what living an open-handed life is about.
Right.
Not about me.
Finances
not about
the word
me. Time,
that's coming up here is humility. And again, this humility, this concept is that is putting God first. He's saying He is the creator of the universe, and He loves me and He wants me to do great things, and He desperately wants to bless me and all of us. But He doesn't like it when we think that we're capable of doing these things on our own.
Right. And that's the thing.
That's not humble.
Is where pride will well up in me and all these other things, which is at the end of the day, is if I could just zoom out and like watch myself react like that, watch myself, it's like I've completely missed the purpose or the reason but behind it, and it's easy to do. Like I don't want to demonize a single person for a second to say like, and you're just awful for doing that. It's like, I might have a tendency to do that, But what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose to believe that I'm going to recognize that,
Yep.
and I'm going to turn away from that.
Right.
And God has way more grace for me than I have sin to commit.
Yep.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get back up and I'm going to do the open-handed living thing again.
There you go.
Like I'm going to try again.
There you go.
I'm going to try to be generous again.
Yeah.
And I might get burnt. I might get whatever.
Yep.
Like I might make it about me.
I guarantee you will.
Yeah, but I'm going to do it again because ultimately, like I'm not doing it for me.
Yeah.
Like the blessing behind living an open-handed life is the freedom that comes with an open-handed life. Like,
Yeah, and we know some people like this, and it's occasionally it's those older saints that have learnt this lesson the hard way through their life, and there's something that's incredibly beautiful and attractive about their humility, about their generosity of their time, of their effort, of their compliments, of their praise, of their money, and yet they have come to a place of maturity where it's no longer they fully understand, or at least more fully than me, understand where it comes from.
Yeah,
and those people are incredibly attractive, and I think that's what.
Yeah, that's what I want to emulate. That's what I want. That's what I want to become. And so maybe you're listening to this, and if you're still listening, if you hung through the financial talk about that, hopefully as you're listening to this, I really want to encourage you is to look for an opportunity to be generous, to be open-handed. Yeah. When at Wellspring, when we say be generous, this is what we mean. Yep. Live an open-handed life. And you can do that. You feel the freedom to do that when you are living that deep life. When I understand that God has an endless supply of grace and life for me, then I can be generous with grace and with my life.
Right.
Because he has an endless supply for me.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things like where my kids will fight over French fries when we stop at a fast food place.
Right.
They'll fight over French fries.
Yep.
And it's like, I can buy all the French fries.
Yeah.
Like, I can buy all of them.
We've got an endless supply.
My kids will fight over bubble gum.
Yeah.
And it's like, I have all the gum.
Yep.
I have more gum than you could ever chew, like ever. Stop fighting over the gum.
Right.
I have all the gum.
Yeah.
Like, and we do the same thing. It's like I want to fight over forgiveness, finances, time, blah, all these other things that we refuse to be open-handed with. We fight over it.
Right.
In your marriages, you might fight over it. At your job, you might fight over it with your kids. Like there's all this tension that gets built over fighting over different things in life when God has an endless supply of grace for you. He has an endless supply of forgiveness for you. He has an endless supply of life for you. And the one thing that you and I don't have an endless supply of is time.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to waste any time like fighting over gum when he has all the gum.
And when I understand that, and when I live knowing that his supply is endless, then I can go out and be generous in whatever way he's made me to be.
Yeah.
I can go out and be generous to others.
Yeah, not because,
expecting
not because of the results that I get, or not because like, well, I'm going to do this and then like, I'll get mine later.
Yep.
No, that's not the reason why I'm doing that.
And
I have an endless supply of it.
And that's a really good. That's the same two actions. Someone can give compliments, but be looking for a return, and someone can give the same compliment and be doing it genuinely.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can't tell. And sometimes we don't.
Sometimes you can though.
Sometimes
isn't that funny when you can?
Sometimes you can,
for sure.
And sometimes you can't tell.
Yeah.
But for me, personally, my blessings come from doing it because of knowing His grace and His endless supply of love for me.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, guys, I hope that you get an opportunity after you listen to this to be open-handed with someone in your life. And you can, if you're looking to hang out with us, come hang out with us live on Sundays at the Bear Levin Studer YMCA at 10 a.m. We would love to see you. And I will give you an open-handed high five. So I'll see you there.
Bye-bye.